Hello, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. Signed, sealed, remembered, friends enjoy, Circle G. And today, we're going to be telling more stories about the Circle G, because we can't leave this ranch until Elvis leaves. And right now, he's gathered all his friends around him. And from the archives, today, the voices of those friends are about to emerge. And they're going to tell us about life on the ranch. And these friends, these are people to whom Elvis gave away his heart, just like he did during his very last performance at the Hilton Hotel in 1976. When he turned the spotlight from himself and to people who were in need. And that's the story that's told by this song that I wrote to honor that moment.
Midnight lights, rhinestone fire, Arabian suit, burning with desire. He hit the stage like thunder rolls. Vegas shook and the story unfold. Charlie's birthday, crowd went wild. He cracked a joke, then sang with style. But just before he sang Hurt So Deep, he stopped the show and made us weep. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Black in hair, the man stepped near. Elvis smiled, the crowd could hear. Thanks to you, we raised the light. 17,000 hearts took flight. Then back behind the velvet door, he gave away a little more. Music ring, a boxcar shine, a suit that held his sacred time. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. He didn't need applause to know his worth. He gave away his soul in Vegas mud. Not just a king, but something more. A man who knew what hearts were for. Gave away his heart, not just a soul. Pieces of love where the brave belong. Ritual gifts from the man backstage. He saved the hurting, hid the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I'll never be the same. I was there, I saw the rings, I saw the light. Gave away his heart, and it burned so bright.
Welcome to Hillbilly Cat History. And we're going to be talking today about his friends enjoying the Circle G. Thank you to everybody that's joined us. I appreciate everybody who comes and shares in the live. It makes it so much better. Today, the story is going to start back around Christmas of 1976, when Elvis and Jerry bought a special quarter horse. It was black, all black, with a single white sock. It was named Domino, and this was the horse for Priscilla. And Joe Esposito tells us a story about it. Joe said Jerry held the horse while Elvis went into the house, which would be Graceland, to bring Priscilla out. He led her out the front door, right up to Domino, with his hand covering her eyes. When he took his hand away, she was looking straight at this gorgeous animal. "Where did he come from?" Priscilla gasped. "I bought him for you," Elvis said, very pleased with her surprise and delight. "He's your Christmas present." Priscilla went crazy, hugging and kissing Elvis. "I've got to ride him right now," she said. The horse was already saddled and bridled, so Priscilla jumped on and took off for the pastures. And she rode Domino every day she was at Graceland. At least that's the way that Joe tells the story. And I have a picture for you guys to look at today. Let's see if I can find it here. And this is a very special picture because it has a whole lot of people on it. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. And Keith is asking, what year was this? The year of this picture is 1965. This is actually the Colonel's birthday. I think it's his 55th birthday. And there's a whole lot of people that are in this picture that are just all over these stories that we're telling. So I thought it'd be interesting for us to take a look at this so we can get an idea of the faces that went with these stories. Because this is almost what they looked like when they were on the ranch. They're just a couple of years older than they are right here. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And I'm going to start over on the left, because those of you that were here yesterday, we heard a really good story from Billy Smith, who talked about Elvis going to Sears, purchasing a lawnmower that had a wagon behind it. And he talked all the wives into getting into this wagon. And if you've seen pictures that I've shown you of those wives, they're not in this picture. But we've seen Joni Esposito. We've seen Priscilla. We've seen Joe Smith, although not within this series, at different times. And there were a couple of other women that were in that wagon. But basically 5 of the most beautiful women that you've ever seen are all in this little wagon. And there's a very large gentleman that's in there with them. Elvis ends up dumping the wagon, and the large man ends up on top of them all. It was a man that was part of the Memphis Mafia that Elvis called Chief. And that's the man that's at the left of this picture. He's wearing a suit, and you can see that he is a very large man, and he is much bigger than everybody else in the picture. And that is Ray Sitton. And Elvis called him Chief. Hi, chillin' in Canada. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing you here. So if you've never seen Ray Sitton or Chief or ever heard of him before, there he is. That's what he looked like. And you can imagine him standing at the gates as Elvis drove by and didn't know who he was, and he kept saying, "Hey, Chief." Until eventually Chief just joined the group. And the guy standing next to Chief, well, that's Joe Esposito. And you can see that he's wearing his jacket in I think it's a faux Elvis style, something like the Fonz would wear. Someone who's trying to be Elvis, but Elvis would never, I don't think, wear his jacket exactly like that. And he's got his shirt open at the collar, I think also to be cool. He's got his hair done a little bit like Elvis. But that's Joe Esposito. He's from Chicago, and he served in the army with Elvis Presley. Hey, welcome, Gunn. Appreciate seeing you here. And Keith saying he thought that was Lamar. Nope. Here's a guy that, of all the guys in the group, Lamar and he may equal each other in size, but I believe Chief is taller. So the man standing next to Joe, well, he's an unknown. And it's okay. He's not within the Circle G story. But if you happen to know who he is, let us know. I believe he's a MGM executive or someone that was connected to the production on the part of MGM. Because they are on the set of, I believe it's Girl Happy. I could be wrong about it. No, this is not Girl Happy. This is another movie. I don't remember, though. But he was connected to the movie in some way, is my belief, as well as the man behind him. But the man in the blue jacket, well, that's Colonel Parker. And you can see he's got the gray slacks on. He's got black shoes. He's holding a black cane. And he's got on looks like a blue bow tie and a cigar in his mouth, just like he always does. A little bit hard to see the cigar because it's face on into the camera. And you can see that he's standing in front of a golf cart. It has a little roof over it. It's a little 3-wheel golf cart. It's blue. Somebody's taped some party horns and balloons onto it. That's the gift. That's his birthday gift that Elvis is giving to him. So, of all the gifts that Elvis gives the Colonel, this one is a little bit practical, I think, because he would be able to ride it around on this movie lot and get to places a little bit faster. Now, we can see Elvis is wearing a very similar blue jacket to the Colonel. It makes you wonder if they called each other that morning and coordinated their outfits, right? But they're both wearing a blue jacket. Elvis does not have a bow tie, and he's wearing like a teal shirt underneath his blue jacket. He has black pants and black shoes. And he's got his arm around a lady who's wearing a pink dress, a pink pink two-piece outfit with like a button-down blouse in the front with a bow on it. In a pink skirt. It looks like it has some type of white pattern all over it. And it's all made from the same fabric. And she has a big set of pearls around her neck, is what it looks like. And I think I can even see some pearl earrings, but I can't be positive. Well, that lady, that's Marie Parker. That is the Colonel's wife. I don't think most fans have seen Marie Parker. She gets sick later on, and the Colonel cares for her until she passes away. And her last years are not, they're not good years. But in this picture, she's still vibrant. She's still happy. She's been married to the Colonel for a very long time. She is the brother or the sister of Bitsy Mott. Bitsy Mott is her brother. She and the Colonel used to live in Florida together. Tampa. And Elvis liked her a lot. And although the Colonel sometimes joked, making a pun out of her name Marie, and say that she was Misery. And Gunn saying that he's never seen Mrs. Parker before. Yeah, I thought there's a lot of people that have never seen her. Now, if we look just behind the golf cart, there's a gentleman with a very nice set of hair. He's looking off to the left of the picture. And he's got one foot up on the golf cart. Rather tall guy. That's Larry Geller. So Larry, at the time this picture's taken, he's bringing a lot of books. He's been around for about a year, and he's bringing a lot of books to Elvis. A lot of spiritual books. Elvis is deep into reading the spiritual books and being on whatever quest he was on, which I believe was a quest to find a way to take all of his Jewish and non-Christian friends, like Larry Geller, who was a Jew and a non-believer in his Jewish faith, as well as a non-believer in Christianity, but Elvis saw him as a good person. He was his friend. Elvis didn't want to go to heaven without Larry, but Elvis was going to heaven because that's where Gladys was. There's no doubt that that's where Elvis was going. And he wasn't going to ever do anything to jeopardize that in any way. But he wanted to bring the rest of these people with him. And one of them would have been Larry. And in a way, Larry is bringing him the books for Elvis to find that. It's really a beautiful thing when you think about it, but most people would never see this interpretation. That's my interpretation. It's open to debate. Everybody gets to have their own opinion. That's why we're here. We're looking at the source material, like this picture. You know, the facts are right here in the picture. So you get to see them directly for yourself and make your own decisions about who you believe Elvis was and what he was doing and what he saw in the things that he read and that he searched for. Now, next to Larry is a guy in a red shirt. And he's got black hair, it's pretty close to his head. This is a slightly unusual haircut for him. And people who know him from later, they'll know him with a longer, curlier set of hair. Wearing a black jacket. That's George Klein. And he went on to become famous on... Well, he was already semi-famous. He was always a semi-famous DJ, well-known in Memphis. And he got a television show when cable first came around on the Nashville network. And he did a lot of great interviews with different people in the industry. Now, the guy that's just in front of George, and he's wearing a jacket that sure looks a lot like one of the jackets that Elvis will eventually wear around on the Circle G Ranch. Well, that's the foreman of Circle G Ranch. That's Alan Fortas. Now, we've heard a lot about Alan during these episodes. He was a star football player in college. And that's really how Elvis got to know him. He was very impressed with Alan's physicality and his athleticism. And of course, Alan and he played a lot of football together. And then he put Alan in charge of the ranch. And in this picture, which is 2 years before, it looks like they're all wearing boots. but Alan's wearing the ones that look closest to cowboy boots, just maybe foreshadowing his future along with that jacket. And the guy that's right behind Alan, well, that's another one of the Memphis Mafia. He's wearing a blue shirt, got black pants on. He and Alan both look like they are eating very well. They're a little rounded around their middles. He and Alan look to be about the same height. This gentleman might be slightly shorter. And you can see that on his shoes, on his boots, he has very high lifts. The heels are very high. That is Marty Lacker. He's a little bit bald on top, about a 3/4 bald, very high forehead. And Elvis would nickname him, because of the forehead, nicknamed him Moon. And the man that's standing next to Marty Lacker, who's wearing like a blue sweater or jacket along with a blue shirt under it, and is a tall gentleman, black pants, also wearing shoes with high heels, boots, but they've got a very tall heel on that boot, which was a thing that these guys did. They all wore high heels in Hollywood in order to appear taller on the sound stages so that they could maybe have an edge over these Hollywood types. But this guy, that's Richard Davis. And we've heard about Richard Davis several times during the story. So if you've been following the previous episodes, you know about Richard. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. So back to just around Christmas, 1966. We'll fast forward just slightly, and Elvis, Jerry, Priscilla, Sandy, and Alan found the Circle G Ranch, and Elvis talked to Jack Adams about purchasing the property. And we've heard that story. We've heard it a couple of different ways from a couple of different people. But now we're going to hear it from Marty Lacker, because he remembers it differently. Marty remembers that Elvis had already been looking for a ranch ever since he purchased the horse, the one for Priscilla and the ones right before it. He immediately began to think, Graceland's not really big enough for this. It'd be really nice to have a nearby ranch and we could ride the horses around on it. And what Marty says is, one day Alan came up to the house and told Elvis there was a for sale sign in front of the beautiful place on Goodman Road we had passed so many times. We jumped in the car and rode down there quickly. Elvis was happier than I had seen him in a long time. We learned the name of the owner and made arrangements to meet with him at the ranch the next day. So this story is different than the stories that we've heard before. When we heard it from Alan, it was Alan and Priscilla and Elvis, and they were all in a convertible. And I believe it was very early in the morning. And Jerry Schilling also agreed that it was very early in the morning, but he said it was in a double cab pickup truck. And it was Jerry and his girlfriend Sandy, who he later married within that year, along with Elvis and Priscilla, and Alan Fortis was driving the double cab pickup truck. And now we see that Marty Lacker is saying that he was in the vehicle as well. He doesn't say whether it was a convertible or he does say a car. that's probably forgivable because he's telling a memory. So he knows they got into a vehicle, so he doesn't specify the vehicle. But he says that he was there too. And Marty remembered Jack Adams offering to let Elvis stay at the ranch for a few days to see how he liked it. Now that jives with everything we know, because we know Elvis did stay there. And that he got up the next morning and he said, according to Alan, "This is the best sleep I ever had." And we know that's a big deal because Elvis didn't sleep very well. So if he could get a good night's sleep, perhaps without medication, well, that alone was worth buying the ranch for. But Marty Lacker remembers that Elvis said to Jack after the offer, "Well, thanks, but I wanted to buy the ranch. How much are you asking?" $375,000, the owner answered. His back was to me, and I shook my head to indicate to Elvis that I thought it was too high. Elvis said, "Will you take any less?" "I don't see how I could," the owner answered. "Well," Elvis said, "let me think it over. I would like to have it." We stayed there for a few days, and before leaving, Elvis told the owner he would like to buy the ranch, but would need a few more days to think it over. So we've got a detail here that Marty's given us of $375,000. Now we know, because we've seen the check, and it referenced paperwork that came with it. But we've seen the $5,000 earnest check, and the total purchase price was $437,000. So it wasn't $375,000. Nobody ever offered $375,000. So I think this is another fantastic example that people, they remember emotional truth. They don't remember factual truth. It's very hard for us to remember facts. We're not built for it. Our neurons connect together in ways that are determined by the importance that we see between different events. And we determine that importance through their emotional resonancy. How important they are to our feelings, even the most logical of us. And that's how our memory system works. So it doesn't work with facts. And we can remember facts, but we're just not really good at them. And the ones who are really good at them, well, they're people that are like doctors and scientists, and they have these jobs where you're required to be able to remember these massive amounts of facts perfectly. But most of us, we just don't do it that way. So Marty remembers it was a lot, but he gets the number wrong. And Gunn saying, strange how people remember differently, right? Exactly right. And Linda's saying that she has 3 siblings and they all 4 remember things different. And Marianne says that shows again how reliable our memories are. That's right. So what we've got to do is put all of these memories together. And we glean the emotional truth from the event, which is that Elvis saw this cross and he had to have the property. It spoke to him. Now, Marty's story doesn't have the cross. So that's kind of an issue for the story itself. But Marty was around at the time. He was definitely there. He was, I believe at this point in time, living at Graceland in the apartment that was the garage, and that Verdon would later live in at the end of his life. I'm pretty sure that was this time. Now, again, I haven't verified that. I'm saying that off the top of my head. So this is a great time for my disclaimer that I have no special dispensation to talk about Elvis. Nobody's given me any qualifications. I don't have any degree in Elvis. I just get on here and talk about stuff that I see and that I think. We all look at the source material together. So if you have an opinion, feel free to put it in the comments, put it into the chat. Make sure you give us a like, that you subscribe, and you hit the notification button so you know when we're going to go live. YouTube likes to make it very difficult for us all to gather at the same moment. So if you ever wonder, I do it every day at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's right now, 24 hours from now. I'll be on here again, and we'll be talking about Elvis one more time. We'll still be doing the Circle G Ranch, because I've got just so much to tell you guys about Circle G, and I don't want to leave until Elvis wants to leave. And so right now we're on Circle G. So Marty wants to help Elvis purchase the Circle G. He wants to make sure that happens. So he racks his brain to think of ways that he can bargain down this price on the ranch. And he thinks, why do we need these cattle? These cows drive up the purchase price, and they're going to be a continuous operational cost. Like, somebody has to take care of them and feed them all the time. So he suggests to Elvis that they just exclude the cattle from the purchase price. And Marty remembers, he says, when I suggested this, Elvis said, good idea. What the heck do I want with the cattle anyway? Why don't you and Alan go down tomorrow and see what you can do to work it out with him? That's how Marty remembers it. Now, Joe Esposito, he remembers it a little different. Joe Esposito says that Alan reported back to Elvis that Jack wanted $485,000, including the cattle, for the property. Now, again, I don't believe that's the number, because we know he ended up paying $437, and he didn't dicker. And I don't think Jack came down. So 485, again, is an emotional number of near, but it's not the actual factual number. And then Elvis said, let's go home and talk to Daddy. And they drove straight to Vernon's house. And Joe says, Daddy, Joe's telling this story about what Elvis says. Elvis says, Daddy, I found the perfect ranch. I want to buy it. And Elvis described the place and told Vernon the price. And Vernon said, now wait a minute, son. That sounds like too much money to me. Do we have to buy the cattle with it? And Elvis said, I want the cattle. What's a ranch without cattle? So the next morning, Vernon drove to the ranch, and he saw Jack Adams, and they struck a deal, and Vernon went to his bank to borrow the money. And Elvis was now a full-fledged rancher, the proud owner of a herd of cattle and 16 horses. So we know that there were 18 horses, because we've seen both Alan and Marty, who Alan actually took care of the horses, and Marty handled the books that paid for the horses, although Joe did too. So Joe says 16, the other two guys say 18. But we've also seen reports of oh, I'm sorry, you know what? This is 16 horses. I'm off on a tangent that's completely wrong. It's 18 cattle. This is the first time we've seen a number attached to the horses. So I believe Joe's telling us that 16 horses came with the ranch as well as the cattle. Although that could be the 16 horses that have already been referenced that were over at Graceland. It's just so confusing the way these guys talk and to remember these things. It's like hearing all of your grandparents tell the same story in different rooms. And the next, but in this story, Vernon drove down and took care of everything. That's the first time we've ever heard that. And Marty does not remember it that way. What Marty remembers is that he personally dickered with Jack Adams, and he almost succeeded in securing a lower price. And then the phone started ringing. But he told the story a couple of different times. And in 1978, this is the way that he told the story. He said, about the time Jack Adams finished agreeing, the phone rang. And when Jack answered, I heard him say, well, yeah, that's the way I thought you felt about it. Okay, here, I'll put him on. Then Jack handed me the phone, and when I answered, Elvis said, don't try to do any more. I told him I want the ranch and will pay the price. But Elvis, I said, no, I don't want to talk about it. He cut me off. Come on back here. Alan and I were annoyed at his sudden change. Elvis never told us why he changed his mind, but we thought it was because his father had expressed some interest in the cattle, and Elvis decided to keep them for him. Okay, so I want to read that last section again because it's very, very important. Marty said in 1978 that Elvis had called and said, don't dicker with Jack anymore. We're done with the dicker. We're going to pay the full price. Just come on back here. And that he says Alan and I were annoyed at his sudden change. What we know for sure is because he can't speak for Alan. He can speak for how he felt Alan may have felt. But we know for sure that Marty was annoyed that he was not allowed to save Elvis this money, that his contribution was not, in his eyes, appreciated. But the most important thing he says is that Elvis never told us why he changed his mind. Now, he gives a reason that he thinks that Elvis changed his mind, but that is Marty's perception. And he tries to bolster it by saying, we thought. But this statement was not published in a book that other people wrote. It was in a book that Marty wrote. So this is Marty's feelings. He thought it was because whatever. It doesn't make any difference why he thought it was. The reality and truth of the situation is Elvis never told us, meaning Marty, Elvis never told me why he changed his mind. But Marty assigned reasons to Elvis, and those reasons that Marty assigned have been used by so many people to say that this is who Elvis was and this is what he thought. But it was only one person's perception of the reality of the events, which were he wasn't told. He was not brought in on the secret. He was excluded, and he felt excluded. And he never stopped feeling excluded. And we're going to see that now in this quote that he gives in the mid-1990s when he tells the same story again. And here's how he tells it this time. Elvis was sitting in the den with his father. Okay, just so that we understand where that is. The den is what we now call the jungle room. So back in the 60s, it was not decorated in its current jungle-y style. That was done in the 70s, but it was enclosed. It used to be an open-air porch. And they enclosed it and made it into the den. And it just had like normal, I'm sure it wasn't exactly normal furniture, somewhat Elvis-style furniture, but fairly normal 60s-style furniture. So Elvis was sitting in the den with his father, and he said, Daddy wants the cattle, and I want the place. We'll pay the price. So the story has now changed from, well, let's make sure. Let me see exactly what he said the first time. First time he said, don't try to do any more. I told him I want the ranch and we'll pay the price. But in the mid 1990s, Marty's saying that they came back to the house and they went into the den. And there, Elvis told him that Daddy wants the cattle. But he also told us in 1978 that Elvis never revealed a reason that he changed his mind. But in the 1990s version, he inserts an actual event that happened, a conversation that indicates why the mind was changed. And this conversation coincides. It's exactly the same as his theory from 1978. So his theory from 1978 has now become fact. And it's entered the story as fact. He said, Daddy wants the cattle and I want the place. We'll pay the price. And Marty goes on to say, Vernon wanted to be the gentleman farmer because he never amounted to anything on his own. Now, that's just a nasty, mean statement. I'm not saying that Marty was a bad person. I'm not saying that Marty was a liar, that he was trying to lie. I'm saying that Marty had deep emotions tied to this story and to Vernon and to Elvis, and that he had wounds that festered for many years. And you can see them in the changes in these stories. Because Marty would never have said this during Vernon's lifetime or even during Elvis's lifetime, especially not to Elvis. He would never. Now, they did get in a really nasty fight one time, and they said mean and nasty personal things about each other's family to each other, at least according to Marty. So it had happened, but I don't believe he would have said this to Elvis's face, that Vernon never amounted to anything on his own. Now, Vernon was doing a heck of a job. By this point, for more than 12, 13, 14 years, Vernon had been doing all the books by himself. Now, he had some help, but he did use accountants and such, but it was all up to Vernon. It was all his responsibility. He had to be able to account for every dollar. And there were tons of revenue streams. He wasn't just blindly accepting what the Colonel sent. He verified. He didn't want to be cheated. So we've got to remember that, Vernon was an accomplished person. He wasn't ignorant. He could definitely read and write. I mean, that's ridiculous to say that, because Marty's about to say something about it. So let's go on and see what else Marty has to say. Marty says, here was a guy in charge of all of Elvis's personal business who could barely read or write, and who prided himself on being a big horse trader, but he couldn't trade anything. I think they even put Graceland up for collateral. So Marty has an issue with the way that Vernon does business, or that he would use Graceland as collateral. But if you had an asset of the value of Graceland, and you could use it as collateral and make money from it, or not lose money through interest payments that you would have gotten on other unsecured loans. I mean, this isn't really a dumb idea. And it doesn't really jeopardize Graceland, at least not like Marty's saying it is, because in this picture, we can see Elvis is hugging Mrs. Parker and Colonel Parker standing next to him. Well, this Colonel Parker guy, he sure has a whole bunch of money saved up, and he's never gonna let Elvis go homeless or let somebody come in and foreclose on Graceland. Could you imagine the marketing disaster that would be for the Colonel? So, and it's not just the Colonel. He'll go to RCA and get more money. There won't be a money issue. That's not going to happen for Elvis at this point in his career. So, Marty's comments about the way that Vernon does business are just, they're ludicrous. And they just show a massive amount of pent-up frustration and spite towards a man who's been dead for, over like 12 or 13 years by the time he says this. So it's just incredible. Hi, Anita. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. 3:45 a.m. You are definitely dedicated to the Hillbilly Cat program. Thank you so much. And Marty says, the day before we went to talk to Jack Adams, Alan and I called Elvis's attorney, Charles Davis. We told him we are going to try to negotiate with the owner, and we wanted him to go with us. And Davis said, what do you want me for? I'm just his attorney. That's the kind of person Vernon chose to represent Elvis. So again, Marty blames this on Vernon. This what the attorney does, a professional does. Now, I don't know what Marty thought that the attorney was supposed to do. He's not a real estate attorney. If you wanted to get a real estate attorney involved, he'd be happy to go out there. But that's not what this particular gentleman does. And he doesn't need to get involved in this unless it goes wrong. And the thinking is that other professionals will handle it before it goes wrong, and it won't go wrong. And that if there are papers that are generated from the deal, well, he's going to look them all over. But he doesn't negotiate the deal. That's not what he does. So I don't know what Marty wanted him to do anyway, but he feels that it's a failure on Vernon's part for employing this particular guy. And Linda's saying that my videos are great and lots of photos and stories you've not heard before. Thank you so much, Linda. Appreciate the compliment. But now we can move on into the Circle G itself. And we can talk about the original living accommodations, because we've heard a lot about that cottage, and we've seen the pictures, and we know now that it was done up inside. It had just been redone. It was like something out of Home and Garden. It was beautiful and gorgeous, but it was very small. It's basically a one-bedroom place, but it did have 2 bathrooms. And here's what Marty Lacker had to say about the place. Because they were going to spend that first night there. So they're all there at this little cottage, and there aren't any trailers. There's no place else to sleep. There's no tents. There's nothing. It's this cottage or maybe your car. And Marty says, I said, Elvis, what are you going to do about beds? There's only 1 bedroom in this place. And he said, well, me and Priscilla will be in the bedroom. The rest of you can stay in here. We'll get some blankets and sleeping bags and stuff. There were over 20 guys and their wives. We slept on the floor in various rooms. So when asked about the bed, Elvis knew exactly how they were going to use that bed. It's going to be him and Priscilla. And everybody else could hit the floor. And that's what it was like the first night at the Circle G. And Lamar Fike, he was there. He was one of the guys in the cottage on that first night. And he said, oh, that was horrible. I looked at that house. I said, where am I going to sleep, man? But he loved everybody together. And Billy Smith, he was there too. And so I'm assuming that means Joe Smith was there. And Billy said, Lamar got the couch, and the rest of us started scratching for chairs, and finally, just a vacant spot on the floor. To get up for a glass of water was like going through an obstacle course. And there were only 2 bathrooms. Elvis and Priscilla got one, so the rest of us stood in line the next morning. So it was a small, cramped place. And they had, I don't know if it was 20 guys and 20 wives, or so 40 people all together, or if they're trying to say 10 couples for a total of 20 people, but it was a lot of people smashed into 2 rooms. And in one room, there were only 2 people. And Anita's saying a bit hard to go live this time of morning. Should be asleep. You definitely should, Anita. You definitely should. I live in Australia, but I started listening to videos only a couple of weeks ago. Good luck, Hillbilly Cat. Thank you so much, Anita. And, you know, I always appreciate you watching the reruns. Feel free to leave comments. And I'm always happy to answer back. And Gunn says only 1 bed. What were they supposed to do? Well, I think somebody should have gone and bought some cots. I mean, there was a Sears nearby. We know that from the other stories. So that's what I would have done. But I guess they just hit the floor. I don't know where they got the sleeping bags from either. I mean, somebody must have gone somewhere and gotten something, but we don't get those kind of details. And Lamar Fike said, you know, that the next morning, we know that Alan said that Elvis got up and he said, "This is the greatest sleep of my life." Right? Until Lamar Fike, Elvis said, "Good God, I've moved back to Mississippi." Because that's where Elvis was from Tupelo. And so they had things they needed to do that first day. And I don't know, you know, Marty's going to tell us about things that they did right away. And I don't know if that means they did them that day or if they did them as soon as the deal was finalized for Elvis to live there or to own the property. But Marty says the first thing was to buy a new king-size bed for Elvis and televisions for each room. So I'm assuming that means 2 televisions because it's a 1-bedroom house, but maybe they got one for each bathroom. I don't know. Sounds like multiple televisions and a new king-size bed. Well, that means there was another bed now. So I guess that the 1 bed moved out to the front room and maybe other people got to sleep on it till other accommodations were made. But again, we don't get that kind of detail. We've just got to speculate. Now, Nash Presley says, you know, and she's Vernon's sister, that when Elvis bought the ranch, he bought trailers and trucks, not only for him and Priscilla, but for the people who traveled with him. And by that, she's referring to the Memphis Mafia, which would be some of the people we're hearing from in this story. And Gunn saying, good for Elvis. He got a good night's sleep. And Keith's asking if the Colonel ever crashed there. I do not believe the Colonel ever spent any nights on the Circle G. Interesting question. I don't know that, but I don't believe that he did. If anybody does know, definitely leave it in the comments or the chat. And Anita's saying she's definitely going to look up old videos later. Thank you so much, Anita. And Lamar said about the trailers. He said, I guess I started all this trailer stuff. He used a stronger word than stuff, but I guess I started all that trailer stuff. We were driving by a trailer park one time, and I said, wouldn't it be neat to have a trailer? Well, it was the worst thing I ever said. Elvis pulled into this place called Green Acres, and by the time he was through, he bought 12 trailers at about $140,000. Man, they had them coming down the highway to the farm all lined up. It was just trailers everywhere. Now, we know about 8 trailers, and we maybe know about a 9th. It seems like he bought 8 and then one more for himself, according to the other stories, although we don't really know that. Just the way that the stories seem. But here, Lamar's saying there was 12. He bought a dozen. Now, Lamar is a known exaggerator. Okay? when he says 12, it could have been 1. It certainly wasn't more than 12. He never de-exaggerates. So I don't know how many trailers Elvis bought. I'm going to stick with the 8. But for the emotional impact of the story, Lamar says 12. And Marty, well, then he has this great idea about Elvis giving land on the Circle G to each of the Memphis Mafia. And during this story, we're going to see more of the long-term bitterness that Marty will eventually hold towards Vernon Presley. And it seems like it's mostly wrapped up in this story, and that it seeps out into other stories, like the one that we just looked at, that precedes this one. But we can't get into it today because we've reached the end of our time together. So we're going to have to look at Marty and what his great idea was, and what happened to that idea, how it got twisted and convoluted, and it brought dissension and turmoil to the perfect paradise that Elvis was trying to build. Before I let you go, I'm going to play for you a song that encapsulates Donna Presley's experience on the Circle G. It's called He Gave Us Everything. And like I tell you guys every day, till I see you again, you all keep on taking care of business.
Oh, 17, snow on the ground, Circle G, love all around. He bought that ranch, opened the gate, said come on in, let's celebrate. Tractor pulling through the snow, laughter rising, spirits glow. Both behind, wives and men, family fun again and again. He wasn't just a star in lights, he was the warmth in winter nights. Kindness wrapped in velvet flame, a heart that never played the fame. He gave us joy, he gave us praise, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us wings. Circle G, where the angels sing. He gave us everything. Riding horses, legs so still, bridge and cross on the quiet hill. Barbecue smoke, stories told, moments more precious than gold. He'd ask me who I'm dating now, what I dream, what I'll allow. He cared like kin, not just a name. You live for love, not for acclaim. He wasn't just a voice on stage, he was the soul behind the page. A man who'd sing to heal your day and laugh at midnight, lose away. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us grace. Gave us everything. Oh, he lived like a shadow in the night, famous face, but heart so bright. Couldn't walk the street like you and me, so he built a world where we were free. gave us everything. Yes, he gave us everything.
The lights came down on Vegas gold. July heat, a crown retold. Applause like thunder, stars align. But one true friend was not in line. A telegram, a quiet grace. From 12 years deep, a loyal face. I read your words, they calmed the flame. In all that noise, I spoke your name. I wish you could have been here, Gary. The velvet night, the roaring crowd. But in my heart, your voice was steady. A whisper soft, a faith unbowed. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the haze to Graceland's porch where silence sings and friendship wears no stage or wings. The suits, the gifts, the famous hands, they cheered the king, they made demands. But in the mirror doubt would stare, and only you knew what was there. I wrote you lines in trembling ink, not for the press, not for the drink, just for the man who saw me hold beyond the glitter, past the road. Say hello to everyone, I'll be home when this is done. The curtain falls, the echo fades, but you remain my serenade. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the hay to Graceland's porch where silence sings and friendship wears no stage or wings. His time came too early, the curtain fell too fast. Before he was ready, before we could grasp the man behind the myth, the ache behind the fame. He wanted something simple, not fortune, not acclaim. Six is 3, the threats came down like rain. He spoke of love, not fear, through the shadow and the strain. I wanna live to be old, he said with quiet grace, to remember her love and see our children's face. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he'd given in his best. No mansion in the sky, no diamond parade, just the warmth of a hand and the life they made. A whisper of laughter, a child's sleepy sigh, that was the dream he carried inside. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he'd given it